Hello there. Welcome back. Or if it's your first time, thanks for coming and welcome to my home. I'm glad that you could make it because today we have an awesome miniature to be working on. It's a Stonehorn from the Age of Sigmar line of Beastclaw Raiders. They are absolutely beautiful models to look at and to behold. While we're painting it, we're going to be focusing today just on the fur and the body details of the mount that the rider is upon. Alright, we are going to start with Skaven Blight Dinge, a nice deep dark gray color that we will use to begin our skin tones, especially focusing around the legs and bottom portions of the Stonehorn beast that this Huskard is riding upon. You're going to notice that we are not being too cautious at all here with this dark gray color because other than the primer, nothing else on this model is painted, so you can kind of go crazy on this if you want. I kind of did. You're going to see later that it really didn't help too much. I was a little bit color happy with my airbrush here today on this project, and I really wanted to jam in as many colors as I could. Next up we have Eshin Gray, another color from GW. It's just one little tick on the scale higher than Skaven Blight Dinge is, and I'm going to use that to highlight all of the skin that I just went over, and you're going to see later on that some of this is futile as the patches of skin, especially on the back in and around the fur, they just did not stay this dark color as I started hitting them with more and more fur tones to try and highlight up this gargantuan monster's hairy bits. Of course, next we have Dawnstone from Citadel, another GW paint here that is going to give us one more highlight of gray going up. We're going to revisit Dawnstone later, actually, after we discover throughout this process that the skin is being covered quite a bit by the fur tones that are applied later. So go ahead, sit back and enjoy the nice audio that I've got here as you can see some of these layers of paint that are going to be promptly covered up. The Fang by Citadel, or GW, is the next color that I chose for this, as I really wanted to make sure that the blue tones underneath the fur would stick through. The end result that I wanted was a mimicry of polar bears in the wild, but with a hint of blue magic. You there, sir. Pay attention to that dangly bit over there. As you will see, soon I will make it disappear. Next up, for the under blue glowing effect that I was going for here, we have Fenrisian Gray being applied over the top of all of those areas of rust gray. There, can you see it now? I've made it disappear through the magic of movie production. Or I had one of the hanging pieces of chain traps off the back there fall off in between two shots. Next up is what I would consider the riskiest choice that we made here today, and that is GW's, or Citadel's, Karak Stone. Now, the purpose behind applying this to the miniature was to try and recreate the effect that you see whenever you view a polar bear, at least from a distance. The Miniature Militia of Minnesota is not responsible for injuries caused by viewing polar bears in real life due to a desire to recreate nature in miniature form. The next paint that I'm going to be applying after this is Pallid Witch Flesh, and I want to point out during this sequence something that I have thought since finishing this miniature, and that is, at that point, when I was just twisting it there with the end of the Karak Stone, is most likely the best place I could have stopped, reevaluated what I was doing, and said it is time to dry brush white over all of this fur in order to blend it together. As Bob Ross would have said, we don't make mistakes, we make happy little accidents. And that was just one of them. I am not dissatisfied with the final result. However, quite a few of the next steps could have been saved, or at least could have been prevented, had I gone ahead and done that instead. The next thing that I loaded into the airbrush was Vallejo's Game Air Dead White, and I added that directly to the Pallid Witch Flesh in about a 50-50 mixture. I was shooting this directly onto the model in very short bursts. I was applying a lot of air and very little paint, trying to get just the tops of the miniature to give a bit of a zenithal effect to the highlighting that's going on with the fur, especially paying attention to that back there, as you can see. I would definitely consider this step with the Dead White and Pallid Witch Flesh mixture to be a happy little accident. You know what isn't a mistake though? That's subscribing to this channel and liking and commenting on this video. Next up, I grabbed some Game Color by Vallejo's Turquoise, and I made a glaze mixture out of it, using nearly 5 parts water to 1 part paint. And I applied it just to the tufts of each of the arms or appendages of the beast and all along its belly. And you're going to see that this creates a very nice, glowing, icy, magical effect. Well, you're watching this video, you can act now! And head on over to Instagram or Patreon with links in the description. That's a nice turquoise. Yeah, no, I really like that turquoise. Now, I had left the Pallid Witch Flesh and Dead White mixture still in the pot, but for posterity I am showing them here again. I've got a 50-50 mixture of Dead White and Pallid Witch Flesh. With this mixture, I am going back in and focusing very light coats of the white paint right over the turquoise. This will give a turquoise underglow effect while still allowing the patches of fur that I have changed their color to be turquoise to blend in with the rest of the overall beast. Next up, we're going to take some of that raw Dead White from Vallejo's Game Air line and put it on a dry brush and dry brush white at this stage. As I mentioned before, I am aware that I should have done this much sooner in the process, and some of the steps prior to this one were unnecessary, but the end result ended up coming out beautifully. So, next I grabbed some Skaven Blight Dinge, and I started applying that into the cuts and open sores all along the skin on the body, and I used this as an opportunity to go back to those places where some overspray of the much lighter colors had covered up the dark Skaven Blight Dinge that I had put down all along the skin, especially on the upper portions of the body before. After that, I grabbed some Dawnstone and I mixed it in a 50-50 mixture with the Skaven Blight Dinge, and I applied that as a highlight over the tops of some of the more open-faced areas of the open flesh. After that, I grabbed some straight Dawnstone and I threw it on a dry brush, and I hit all of that skin area with a much smaller dry brush than before to make sure that I was accurate. But we highlighted up all those areas of skin with the Dawnstone, which especially made all of those deeper cuts that were created by putting raw Skaven Blight Dinge into the recesses pop a lot more. You notice here that the symbol on the Stonehorn's hip is suddenly not colored in with turquoise anymore. And that's because I had thought earlier I could get away with throwing turquoise in that before finishing the skin, but alas, I could not. So I have some turquoise here. This time it's not nearly as watered down. It's properly mixed so that I can apply it very gently and carefully into each of the recesses of the branding mark on the hip of the Stonehorn, and I'm applying that in such a way that it isn't hitting any of the nice dry brushing work or highlighting that I've done on the skin before it. After that, I took some Temple Guard blue and again thinned it down enough so that it would flow off the brush nicely, and I very carefully went from the center of each of the shards of this symbol and pulled out the Temple Guard blue from the center to about the middle of each of the radial recesses. As this video comes to a close, I want to give a quick shout out to my first ever patron on Patreon. Thank you very much, Allison, for your support. It is very appreciated.